Good Wednesday evening to you. Corey Braddock from the Hawkeye of the Storm and talking here Hawkeye Hangout for the first time in quite some time. So I am pleased to be able to do this. And like I said, it's been a while since we've had actually just a kind of a spontaneous live show. I know I did a live show after the national championship game, but it's just not the same unless we're focused on Iowa and on the Hawkeyes. And certainly lots to talk about. The transfer portal, very much active, very much like college football was about 3-4 months ago or less. And Iowa is in the portal. They are involved in the transfer portal. And we're going to talk about targets. Thank you, Lemansky, for this. Thank you for this, Lemansky, and you're a part of that. Everybody who is subscribed to help us get to over 1,500 subscribers. I certainly appreciate that. And you are the people, you are the ones that help this channel to grow and to help me have reason to continue to produce videos and to produce shows. So thank you, Lemansky. And I'm going to open up the call line here in a second, and we'll get right into the transfer portal, Iowa's targets, and we can discuss the potential for could be a game-changing decision here in the coming weeks from a guy who a lot of people are after in Fardaz Aimaq. I don't think I have to tease that. I think everybody knows Aimaq is the number one guy right now for the Hawks. Now, I'm not saying that I have inside information as to when he's going to decide, but he is going to be taking visits here soon, so we'll break that down as well. Earl Hayden says, I got that broken chicken wing. Yeah, I got this sling here, Hayden. I'm supposed to just kind of wear it as I need it, especially when I'm out. I've got to wear it all the time. When I'm home, I can get away without it, but when I'm sitting here for what I anticipate to be at least an hour or two tonight, subscriber and watcher willing, it's easier for me to have it supported. So, yes, we're about 3 weeks removed from my labrum surgery. And so I'm happy to say that things are going well. Appreciate your concern. Doug, how was the talk with the dude from West Virginia? They seem to have mixed feelings about Joe T. So you're talking about Coos over at Coos' Corner, and I got connected with Coos through Mark Rogers. He works with Mark as well. It was a good conversation. I enjoyed talking with Coos, and he seemed excited about Joe T. One thing him and I both agree on is that Joe T is going to provide something for West Virginia that was probably lacking this past season. Several things, I think, specifically a guy who is going to keep his head up no matter what. We know Joe Toussaint was the epitome of sportsmanship and attitude, good attitude, drive, determination. I'd have to think, I'm not there every day. I'd have to think Joe Toussaint was an exceptional teammate. I think that's clear from everything what we've heard and what we've seen on the bench and on the floor. And then specifically, the fact that Joe is a true one. I know Coos brought that up. West Virginia just doesn't really have a true one, and he's going to be able to provide that. Now, I'd be thrilled, ecstatic for Joe Toussaint if he can go to Morgantown and be the starting one right away. That would be tremendous, and I'm not expecting that. Again, I don't know the roster makeup as well as West Virginia fans would, but I do think that Joe's going to play a lot. I don't think he'd be going there if he wasn't. He's not that close to home. Like everybody's saying, he wants to be close to home. Well, he's back kind of on the East Coast, but he's not really that close to home. All right, so I do think this was a mix. I think that the decision to leave was a variety of things, a variety of factors. I think that's clear. The report from Chad Leistigo of the Des Moines Register several weeks back was that he wanted 30 minutes a game, and Fran McCaffrey was just not willing to commit to Joe and guarantee Joe that he'd have 30 minutes next season. And I don't blame Fran McCaffrey for that. I also don't blame Joe Toussaint. I think Joe feels. Actually, I don't want to assume how he feels. I'll say how I would feel if I was in Joe's situation, just from the outside looking in. I'd be a little frustrated because you got here, you start your first year, you get benched your second year because Bohannon's back healthy. Then you come back and you're told, look, you're going to be the guy. You're our starter. You're our point guard. Jordan is going to play off the ball. And midway through the season, that plan kind of goes up in flames. Now, I don't blame Fran McCaffrey for making that move because it did help Iowa in the long run. But I understand why Joe may want to find different pasture grounds. And again, wish him nothing but the best. I don't know a single Iowa fan that has anything bad to say about Joe Toussaint. Yeah, he's got struggles from outside. He's not a great three-point shooter. He's not the most polished offensive player. But man, he is the epitome of what it means to be a Hawkeye, and I wish him nothing but the best in Morgantown. But I did enjoy that conversation. If anybody missed that conversation with Couz over at Couz's Corner, just search Couz, Couz, Couz's Corner on YouTube and find his channel. And even if you're not a West Virginia fan, check out that segment. And we talked about 20 minutes about that move for West Virginia. And speaking of West Virginia, folks, this is Iowa related. I know it's football related, but how about JT Daniels announcing today that he would be heading to Morgantown? So West Virginia Mountaineers fans got to be thrilled to death right now. Whether you're a believer in JT Daniels or not, they desperately needed a quarterback, and you're getting a guy who has proven himself at a high level. Not to mention guys like Joe Toussaint. They got a kid from South Carolina. They got another transfer, I believe, from a JUCO school. So West Virginia sports looking pretty good right now, utilizing the portal in both major sports. I see Matt Reed here comments Dawson Garcia. I know Iowa was involved with Dawson. I don't think there's been any information, first of all, that's been released about where any reports about where he's considering. Certainly, when these kids that are highly rated 4 or 5-star kids like Dawson, when they enter the portal, their phones are lighting up almost immediately. So I'm sure Dawson's been bombarded by dozens of phone calls because, again, he was a really highly rated kid. And I understand through the grapevine that he's had some tragedy back home. So perhaps he's going to be looking 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601's the number to call. I am with you until at least 8:30 in that range. Well, I kind of try to be flexible. When I schedule these shows, I try to make sure that my evening can accommodate a couple of hours at the minimum. So we'll see where this show takes us, but I'm open for all kinds of topics this evening, whether it be Iowa basketball, Iowa football, the like. And let's see if the little pause in our live shows has changed the order of operations as it relates to caller order, because I think everybody who's followed this show for a number of months knows the caller pecking order. And this is not an insult to anybody or credit to anybody, but, well, I guess you could say it's credit to someone. Let's see if the pecking order has remained the same. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hello, Corey. It's the real MVP. How you doing?
Well, that was hard to predict.
Yeah, I know.
You are on it and ready. I'm doing great, Drill MVP. How are you?
I'm doing good. Well, the reason I'm on it, Corey, is because I've hit the subscribe button and I hit the notification bell.
Yes.
So I always get updates right before you go live.
As everybody should. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you'll be with us right at the outset.
So I would just like to say Joe Toussaint, man. Losing him, that's a big loss. Like, this may be an overstatement, but I think losing Joe Toussaint may have more of an impact on the future of Iowa basketball than even a Keegan Murray. Because while Keegan is by far the better player, I think we can all agree on that, Joe Toussaint is the heart and soul of the team. Like how Draymond Green is to the Warriors.
That's a real deep statement, Drill MVP. I mean, listen, I love myself some Joe Toussaint. But let me just say this, and I haven't said anything bad about Joe Toussaint. I'm not about to, but I think we have to acknowledge the fact that he did excel. It seemed to excel off the bench. So I understand where you're going. Fine,
but there's players in the NBA who I think perfectly describe what I'm talking about, and I think it's what Joe Toussaint will eventually become, like Patrick Beverly and Draymond Green. They're never the best player on their team. But if you don't have them, it's a major loss.
Okay, I'm going to give you a Dallas. Who's your favorite NBA team, Drill MVP? You follow the NBA at all?
I follow the NBA. My favorite player is James Harden. So wherever he goes, I root for.
All right, so he's in Philly now, right? So
yes.
I'll give you an illustration. I'm trying to think of Philly's roster. I'm a Mavs fan. First of all, let me give you a Mavs illustration. So Keegan Murray is to Iowa, or was to Iowa, what Luka Doncic is to Dallas. So right now, Luka's out right now. All right. And if I had a choice between Luka being out and Jalen Brunson being out, I would take Jalen Brunson every single time. And that's no diss to Jalen Brunson. I love Jalen Brunson, but I think that we're talking apples and oranges here because, and I don't even know, there's really no point in having this discussion because Keegan Murray is not going to be here anyways. Neither guy is back. I get what you're saying. Joe Toussaint, as I've said on numerous occasions, I do believe was kind of the heart and soul of the team. I also think Jordan Bohannon, whether you like him or not, I think you have to acknowledge the fact that Jordan was a leader on this team for the past 6 years, and losing him is going to be a blow. Leadership-wise, this team's got some question marks. It's good that they're going to get Connor McCaffrey back. I don't think that's been official, right? But I think it's going to happen. But I get what you're saying. It is a loss. It didn't blindside me, though, Drill MVP. This is something that Iowa fans have been talking about for a while.
It didn't blindside me, but it's still a big loss.
Yeah. Well,
he checks the intangibles box better than almost any player in the country.
But he doesn't have an offensive game. We can acknowledge that. He really doesn't.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter when you got a dog like him. Or Marcus Smart fits into this category as well. Just somebody that elevates the play of everybody else just by his tenacity in practice. Did you watch any of the play-in games last night?
I did not. I was actually planning on watching them tonight. So again, I'm not a huge NBA guy, but I am a big Dallas Mavs fan, so I'll be watching Dallas Saturday. I was planning on watching. I'll watch some of the play-in games tonight. I did see Minnesota win last night just briefly, but I didn't watch extensively. And I know that
that was where I was going to, was because Minnesota has Patrick Beverley now. The Clippers traded him away. And Minnesota last year was horrible. And they still got most of their key guys, D'Angelo Russell, Karl Anthony Towns. Now, I know Anthony Edwards is new there, and he's a big part of it. But just having that guy that just turns it on and says, this is what we should be, is very impactful for any team.
I agree.
And the Clippers now are in the 8th seed. And they're one of the most talented teams in the NBA.
I don't think comparing Joe Toussaint to Pat Beverley is a bad comparison. I think I'll agree with you on. I mean, there's definitely some similarities there. Pat Beverley is not a real polished NBA player offensively.
Yeah,
I don't think my personal feelings on Pat Beverley is that I don't think he's got the character that Joe Toussaint has. But at the same time,
he doesn't.
He's a dog, and you're right. He's a defensive guy, and no, it's going to hurt. It's going to help West Virginia. I have nothing against West Virginia. And in fact, I was talking with Kuz, what was it, a night or two ago when we recorded. I don't remember the last time Iowa's played West Virginia in any major sport. So maybe that happens in the tournament next year. That would be kind of a cool reuniting, if you will. But he's going to help West Virginia. I don't know if he's going to start, but he's going to help West Virginia. Here's the other thing you got to realize, Drill MVP, and I know you're not a diehard Iowa fan, but you got to realize Iowa's got Aaron Eulis coming back here at point, and I know Jordan Bohannon's gone. They also get a 4-star kid in DeSante Bowen coming in next year as a freshman, who I know Fran is really high on. So I don't think depth at point guard's a real issue. And then you add in the factor that Tony Perkins, I think he has the ability to play some one, and I've said that before. I think they're going to be okay. But you're right, it's going to be a blow, I think, from a leadership standpoint. But given Fran's track record, he's always seems. I don't remember the last time that one of Fran's teams, lacked a leader in the backcourt, even when they struggled in the backcourt with quickness. And I mean, Jordan Bohannon was, when he was here in his second year, they really didn't have any quickness in the backcourt, and yet they had really good leadership from guys like Tyler Cook and Jordan Bohannon. So I don't think they're going to lack leadership, but I do agree that Joe leaving, it does hurt.
Well, Corey, I think they'll figure it out at the end. That's all I was going to say for today. I've got to get going, Corey. But, man, congratulations on hitting 1.53K subs. Let's get them to 2,000 before the football season starts.
Oh, before the football season starts? That's like 7 months. What is that? That's not 7 months. That's like 4.5 months.
Well, what do you want? You tell them then.
Let's aim
July
for
4th?
Let's get to 2,000 by June. Can we do that?
Okay. I already subscribed and hit the notification, though. It's not up to me. It's up to the Hawkeye Nation.
That's true. But I do appreciate
I
appreciate the call, sir. Have a great night. And no, I agree with your MVP. I know he seems to really have a hankering for some Joe Toussaint. I understand. I mean, I love Joe Toussaint. If you've listened to my show, you've heard me say on the air numerous times that Joe Toussaint is one of my favorite players to ever play under Fran. And that's not an exaggeration. It's got nothing to do with star power. It's got nothing to do with points or rebounds. His stat line isn't the best. I mean, offensively, he's a good steals guy. I think he's going to help them create turnovers in Morgantown. But just the way he plays and the way he carries himself and his resilience is just something that's really impressed me. And but I do get where Drill MVP is coming from with his comments. Line is back open, 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601, 1601. Real Hayden says, didn't Joe T hit the winner against Virginia? He absolutely did. And so he does have a mid-range game. I'm not going to knock his entire offensive game. He does have the ability to make tough mid-range shots. He can finish in the lane. He certainly can get in the lane because of his quickness, because of his physicality. He finishes well through contact. I'll tell you, if Joe T had a three-point shot, a reliable three-point shot, he could be one of the better point guards in the Big Ten, or I guess in the Big 12 now. He absolutely could be. I just, at this point in a guy's career, you typically don't see someone like this develop a three-point shot out of nowhere. And he's made threes. He can make threes. I think he shot like 27% last season. So it's not like he can't make them, but he's not going to make them consistently. And so, it is what it is. But Joe, there's no question, West Virginia is boosted. And he was ranked. I mean, he was rated as one of the higher-rated transfers available out there in the portal, believe it or not. And so it was good to see him. And he had a lot of offer. I shouldn't say offers, had a lot of interest. I don't know how many of these schools offered him, but we're talking St. John's, West Virginia, Xavier was named, Oklahoma State was named, Kansas State was named, Drake was named. It's incredible, the schools that were pining for Joe Toussaint. But, I think the good news is everybody who's left this year, and there have been 4 guys that have left, all right? 4 guys that have left with Keegan Murray, Austin Ash, Joe Toussaint, and Josh Agundale, plus, of course, Bohannon, who graduated for the third time. All those guys that left, I think, are leaving on good terms. And I think that's different than what we saw with C.J. Frederick. There's no question about it. It's different than what we saw with C.J. Frederick last year. And so I wish the best to Joe Toussaint. Good to see you here, Joe. Joe Welch is here. It says, go Hawks. Absolutely. Doug, is it Inuruna from the transfer from Kansas, went to Iowa State. He's back in the portal now. He says, well, he'll need to sit out a year because he's already transferred once, but AMAC would be eligible because he sat out the last time he transferred, right? That's a good question. Almost all these kids are getting waivers, right? So I'm assuming maybe AMAC would need it. AMAC's not waiting around, so I would have to think that he is probably going to be good to go. He has reason to think that he'll be immediately eligible, but that is a good question. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll pull this up as we're talking here, I believe AMAC sat out a year after getting to Utah Valley. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that. Let me check this, because if he did, then that would be, he would get that 1 year of he redshirted after transferring. So I'm assuming that means, and I'm no expert on compliance and on the NCAA and how that works, but my thinking on this, Doug, would be that he would have that 1 year admission to another school, if you will, or that waiver, automatic approval, automatic eligibility once he transfers. So he's coming wherever he goes. He's coming to play right away. Remember, he's also got his name in the NBA draft. He's got an opportunity to go pro if he doesn't like his options in college, or if he likes what he hears from the NBA and his evals. He's got an opportunity to go pro now. I think he could use an extra year. I've watched quite a bit of him. I've had more time on my hands with my surgery recovery to watch quite a bit of Fardaws Aimaq, and I think he needs another year. I think he'd benefit from playing in Fran's system, quite frankly. I do. And I wouldn't always say that about a player, because I think Fran's not the perfect coach. He's going to have his downfalls as a coach. I don't think he's the best defensive coach. I think that's pretty obvious, but I think Fardaws, he comes here, could really develop his offensive skill set and help him to be a good NBA player. I think he's got the ability. He's an elite rebounder. I compared him in my video that I did on Fardaws here earlier this week. I compared him to a shooting version of Reggie Evans. And I'm not saying he's a lights out shooter. I think that's what would probably be assisted by coming to Iowa. Not to mention just his post-up game in general. But he does have some of the same rebounding traits as Reggie Evans. Reggie Evans was not that big in comparison to the rest of the NBA, but he was one of the best rebounders in the league for many, many years, even when he got older. It's not all about size. It's not all about athleticism, although Reggie was athletic. It's about tenacity. It's about effort. And sometimes guys just have a knack for knowing where the ball is going to come off the rim and rebounding without fouling. And I think that's kind of what Fardaws gives you. I mean, he averaged 15 boards 2 years ago. He averaged 14 boards this past year. And yes, I get it. It's against Utah Valley State competition. He's 6'11", 245. He averaged 19 and 14. And I don't want to just rehash everything I talked about earlier in the week. But I do, for anybody who's new here or didn't catch the video from earlier in the week, I'll just kind of summarize a couple of these points about Fardaws. His family's originally from Afghanistan, grew up in Canada, ended up playing in prep school in Canada and then postgraduate school in Maine. Went to Mercer for a year. His head coach got fired. Only averaged 5 and 5 at Mercer. Transfers to UVSU, sits out a year, averages 14 and 15 in 2020, the 2021 season. In the 21-22 season, he averages 19 and 14, shot 49% from the field, 46% from three, made 23s on the season, shot 72% from the free throw line. He was two-time All-WAC. He was two-time Defensive Player of the Year and two-time WAC All-Defense. He was also the WAC Player of the Year in 2021. Now, I don't know. The one thing I don't know, and I failed to look this up, is who won the WAC Player of the Year this past season. I don't have the answer to that because it had to have been somebody really good, because Fardaws was pretty darn good at 19 and 14 for his average. But he's wanted by everybody. And I keep hearing people saying, I think we had a comment in the chat already, that Texas Tech is the favorite. I don't know if that's the case or not. I've heard people speculate, well, he's liking all these posts about Texas Tech on Twitter. I'm not going to read too much into that. To me, let's just wait and see. Get him on campus. He hasn't been here yet. I know Fran visited him this past weekend, but get him on campus. These other schools will get him here to their schools as well. A lot of these other schools are recruiting other big guys. I mean, Arkansas is a perfect example. They just got a pair of twins from Rhode Island, 168, 169. I mean, does that limit Fardaws, or does that possibly discourage him from going to Arkansas? I would have to think that's somewhat the case. That could play into his decision. He's got an opportunity at immediate playing time here. He's going to be the starter. He comes here. He's going to be the starter at the 5. This is nothing against Philip Bracha. I love Philip. I think Philip has an opportunity to still play a lot. I think it would really help Philip, for the record. I think it would help Philip to be off the floor a while and not be off the floor because of foul trouble. Just be off the floor because he can come in and kind of play that sixth man role. He would be, I mean, let's think about this, folks. Philip Bracha would be the sixth man, right? Maybe you could argue Connor. I know that we're kind of jumping all over the place, but if you're projecting a starting lineup with Fardaws Aimaq here at Iowa, you're probably looking at either Ulis or Bowen. I would probably give the nod to Ulis at this point. Bowen's a true freshman, hadn't even gotten here yet. So assuming Ulis is your starter at point, you start Tony Perkins at the 2. You got Patrick at the 3. You've got Chris at the 4 and Fardaws at the 5. All right, so you've got Connor, Phillip, DeSante Bowen. If Josh Dix is ready, he'll be there as well, and Riley Mulvey coming off the bench. And I hope Riley can really develop. They could use him as well at the 5. They need that depth. It's not just a matter of getting one guy. They need to have a guy like Fardaws plus a guy like Riley. I don't think Phillip's going to be able to give you spot minutes at the 5. He basically played the 5. He was the 5 this year. I think he played out of position. But you get Fardaws, and you can develop a guy like Riley, who's not going anywhere, by the way. I think they're in pretty good shape. Now, the one caveat, too, with the lineup, I've been saying this for months. I think Fran needs to go out and get a three-point shooter. I don't think maybe Fran totally agrees with that. I wouldn't be surprised if he still did. He hasn't dismissed the notion of going out and getting a second guy. But even if they're able to land a guy like Aimaq, Yeah, I guess you could pocket the open scholarships, right? They got 3 open before AMAC. You could pocket the other 2 to 23. But to me, if you can find the right guy who's a 3-point guy, who's here for 1 year, a graduate, well, why not? A grad transfer, why not get him and bring him in for a year? Don't waste the scholarship. And yeah, I know you can give a scholarship to a walk-on, but you've got 3 available. I think they've got a need with 3-point shooting. I don't know. Tony Perkins, the biggest question mark with him is his 3-point shot. You could say the same with Aaron Eulis. Those 2 guys are starting, Aaron and Tony. There's some concern from my vantage point of 3-point shooting, right? Patrick has proven to be a good 3-point shooter. Chris is possibly a really good 3-point shooter. We'll see. I think he's good. I think he's right there in line with Patrick. Fardaws can make him if he comes. But I think another 3-point shooter in the backcourt would really help the cause. All right. Line is open. Reminder that the line is open to call in. 515-635-1601 is the call-in number. And we've talked about Fardaws. It doesn't mean we're done talking about him, but I do want to move on briefly to the other guy who's still out there that Iowa has been connected with. And let me pull his bio up here if I can. And that is Jaden Delaire out of Stanford. And this is one that's not been talked about nearly as much. But Jaden's 6'9", 210 pounds, out of Stanford. You see his average. His averages from last year: 10 points, 4 boards. He's a kid who's going to be wanted by a lot of people. My guess is, and I don't know this for a fact, but my guess is that he is a kind of a low-key kid. Doesn't seem to really like the fanfare. He's not real active on Twitter. You're not seeing a bunch of reports about which schools are interested in him, but we do have reason to believe that Iowa has been involved with him, and we'll get to that in a moment. Let's get our next caller here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
This is Bob Carmody.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just wondered, he was just talking about the 3-point shooters and stuff. What about Peyton Sanford?
That's true. I forgot Peyton. That's a great point. I think Peyton's going to really help. They're going to need Peyton. I still think they're a 3-point shooter away from being a Sweet 16, Elite 8 caliber team. But no, you're right. If Peyton Sanford can develop, especially defensively, I don't think he's going to start. I don't see a place for him to start necessarily. But no, you're right.
He's got a big upside, though, I think.
Absolutely. No, he might be the best 3-point shooter returning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just appreciate your show and with everything.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate you calling in.
You're welcome. Bye now. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Appreciate that. Yeah. Peyton, how could I forget Peyton Sanford? Oh, man. Of course, everybody's going to correct me on this. Thank you, Chase, for bringing this up. Peyton Sanford. I knew I was forgetting somebody. And that kind of gives me kind of a sigh of relief to remember that they do have Peyton Sanford coming back next year and could potentially help them in the recruitment of his brother, Price. So Jaden Delaire, back to Delaire here for a moment. And call line is back open. But let me get back to Jaden Delaire, who I kind of led with here. 6'9", 210 pounds, out of Stanford, averaged 10-4 this past season. His actual points numbers went down. He actually averaged around 13 a game in 2021, about 4 rebounds that year as well. So he's been pretty steady for the most part in both of those categories. But the report is that Iowa has contacted him. Now, that doesn't mean they're offering him. That doesn't mean that they're still recruiting him. But that has been out there, that Iowa is going after Jaden Delaire at one point, or at least expressing interest. Okay. At 6'9", he's a guy who could potentially fill the role that Keegan Murray left behind. I know Chris is here. I'm not forgetting Chris. I get that. But to have that second guy who's 6'8", 6'9", and can provide that athletic 4, 3/4. I know Patrick is 6'8", but he plays more like a 2/3, I think. Jaden Delaire could be, or Jaden Delaire, I believe it's how it's pronounced, I believe could be that guy, but it's just been very quiet. It's hard to know. It's really hard to gauge how active is his recruitment right now with Iowa or with anybody. Now, he did also declare for the NBA draft. That should be noted here within the last couple of weeks. Jaden Delaire did declare for the NBA draft, did not hire an agent, so he's going to have his eligibility retained if he wants to come back, go somewhere else, or go back to Stanford. He could go back to the Cardinal. But the point is, Iowa has reached out to him, according to reports, and so there's portal target number 2. All right. Now, The one that I'll bring up, and I know this has been a little bit more publicized, was Rob Finney. Rob Finney out of Indiana is another kid that apparently Iowa did reach out to. We got that report from, I believe it was John Rothstein initially that reported that. He has since trimmed his list down, according to Twitter. He has since trimmed his list down to Butler and Cincinnati, I believe. And so I guess the point is Iowa's, some of these guys, I know Tom Caker tweeted this out a couple of weeks ago. Some of these guys you're just kicking the tire with, and you're just kind of gauging interest from both sides, seeing what's out there. But I guess what I would take away from Iowa's interest in Rob Finney is they're not opposed to going after a guard. Now, Rob was an interesting one because he is a point guard. He's 6'6", made a lot of big shots at Indiana during his career. It was kind of the Jordan Bohannon of Indiana, if you will, making really clutch shots. But he struggled this past year under first-year head coach Woodson. So, I don't know what that means, if that means his game regressed or if he just didn't fit in with the Woodson system. I know Indiana did bring in some guys that got a lot of playing time, and that certainly didn't help. That didn't help Finney. Xavier Johnson really emerged this year, which I don't think helped Finney's playing time. But he is, again, leaving Indiana, but it will not be to Iowa. And really just the one report that Iowa was even interested in him, and then it was silenced until he released his top two here within the past week. So the point is Iowa does have interest, it would seem, in, or at least is interested in gauging interest, if you will, from guys in the portal at guard, guys in the portal at forward, and guys in the portal at center. I would guess if you had to put Fran McCaffrey on the spot that he would say, we're going to go get if we can go get the best guy, we're going to get the best guy. I haven't seen Iowa connected to anybody else, and I could see why fans would be a bit nervous by that, especially at the center position, because it's pretty clear Iowa needs help at that position. And so when you see a lot of big guys who are in the portal without Iowa reaching out, and you see other schools like Iowa State and Kentucky and all these schools reaching out to a lot of kids, yeah, it makes you furrow your brow a bit that, is Fran putting all his eggs in one basket, and that is the basket of Fardaws Aimaq? That could be a concern. But here's what it also tells me. It inspires confidence in me that I think Fran believes that he can land Fardaws Aimaq. So those people out there who are saying Iowa doesn't have a chance and it's a race between Texas Tech and Kentucky or Texas Tech and Houston, that's fine. You can believe that if you want, and I guess I can't prove you wrong. But Fran's no dummy, all right? He is, there's no question if he has made it very clear he wants to go get a center, and he's going to go get a center. And I just would think one of two things. Either he's reaching out to other guys that we're just not hearing about, or he's just really, really confident that they will land Fardaws Aimaq. So I until I'm proven wrong, that's what I'm going to guess, because I'll tell you this. Jake Stevens from VMI, he was a highly touted kid. I shouldn't say highly touted kid. He was a high productivity kid out of VMI. I get it's a different level of D1 basketball. He just committed to a school. I mentioned over Twitter today that I had a conversation because this is something that interests me. The portal is something that is kind of a fun, well, definitely a fun topic in the off season. But I had reached out to UC, drawing a blank now, UC Riverside's Callum Mcrae, who's 7'1", averaged about 11 points, 8 rebounds last year in the Big West Conference. There were reports that he had received interest from multiple Big Ten schools, including Wisconsin, Northwestern. He'd also received interest reportedly from Missouri, Washington State, and others. I reached out to him because I was curious. At 7'1", a guy who he's actually from New Zealand. He's actually pretty good with the left hand. He can go both ways. He is big at 7'1". Certainly would be able to bang with the likes of whoever Purdue has, and certainly Kofi Coburn. I asked him if Iowa had reached out, and he simply said no, they had not. So that's not an indictment on Iowa. I had somebody respond on Twitter that it was unbelievable that what's wrong with Iowa's athletic department? Why aren't they reaching out to people? They are Iowa is in on the highest rated center in the transfer portal. Okay. So I get the outside perception for people who aren't familiar with the situation. This is not like football, folks. Okay. I ranted and raved, and people got tired of me talking about it, but I talked about Iowa's refusal to even kick the tires in the transfer portal at quarterback, and I'm specifically Kirk Ferentz in the football program. There wasn't one substantial report that led me to believe that Iowa was remotely interested in going to get a transfer portal quarterback. And I get it. Not every portal quarterback is going to work out for you. Not every portal player is going to work out for you, whether we're talking about basketball, football, or any sport. But I thought it was an obligation. I thought Kirk owed it to this team and owed it to the fan base to go at least test the waters. I don't know that ever happened. Fran is not doing that. He is very much swinging for the fences on Fardaws Aimaq. Now, if you have a problem with him putting all his eggs in one basket, conceivably, I understand that line of reasoning and that fear. I get that. So, a guy like Mcrae from UC Riverside, that might be a kid you think about going after. Now, here's the other thing about Mcrae and any player. They got to fit the system. They got to fit the style of play. I don't know that Mcrae fits the style of play. I've had more time on my hands than I'd like. I've watched some Mcrae film. He's not the fastest mover. I don't think UC Riverside plays real fast traditionally with their current coaching staff. Look at who's after him. Missouri, Wisconsin, Northwestern. The two Big Ten schools that are in on him are slow it down schools, especially Wisconsin. You had the Chris Vogt kid up at Wisconsin who transferred in from Cincinnati, and he wasn't great this year. He fits the style, right? I don't know that a guy like Mcrae fits the style. So when I tweeted that out earlier today, that was not, well, why isn't Iowa recruiting him? That was not me saying that at all. It was just stating a fact that, hey, this is a kid that averaged 11 and 8. One of the better rebounders in the transfer portal is 7'1". He's not getting recruited by Iowa, according to him. And he did say that he's getting close to making a final decision. So, he'd conceivably be off the board. I see Doug's question about Sharif O'Neal. I certainly don't think that Iowa's real interested in Sharif. I really don't know who was interested in Sharif. I haven't seen a whole lot of reports on him. Get the kid from Morehead State, who's a forward/big. Broom. You've got the kid from Murray State. There's some guys. But the thing about it is, if you are putting all your eggs in one basket, it could come back to bite you, because say Fardaws and he waits 3-4 weeks and picks Texas Tech, and all of a sudden guys like Mcrae and the kid from wherever, VMI, and the kid from Morehead State, and all these guys are off the board. And Ryan Young from Northwestern's guy we haven't talked about, say he's off the board. Yeah, then you might be a bit concerned. I understand people who are concerned. Like I can't imagine a scenario next year where they go in with Philip Rebracha starting at the 5 and Riley Mulvey coming off the bench. Now, if Riley matures and he just makes a huge jump, maybe he could end up starting. We never know. But Fran has made it clear, he's verbalized this. He's made it clear that he wants a guy at the 4, or excuse me, at the 5. And so there's no question they're gonna go get somebody. The Real Hayden says, have you listened to the Teed Up podcast with Connor and Patrick when they interviewed Fran? 37 minutes in, it's great content. I did listen to a lot of that, Hayden. I think I finished it. I may have left about 20 minutes. And that was good listening. It was nice to see Fran. It's interesting. Fran's brother, as many may know, he's a member of the media out east. I believe it's Jack McCaffrey. And yet, I've always felt like Fran, at times, and maybe that's just him, at times he's a bit uncomfortable with talking about certain things, although he is upfront about a lot of stuff like the transfer portal. But boy, it was nice to see him relaxed and having that conversation with his two sons, talking basketball and talking coaching and recruiting. So yes, I would recommend it as well. The Teed Up podcast, and you can find that on YouTube. I have no problem endorsing that. It is a good listen. Doug says, is Aimaq going to Chicago for the combine? Isn't it really hard to get drafted if you're not invited to Chicago? I don't believe that's been announced. I could be wrong on that, but I don't believe the combine announcements have been made yet, Doug. So yeah, if he's not invited to the combine, it's going to be tough. And I don't know how any way to project that. Certainly his numbers are impressive, but I wouldn't be surprised that the NBA wants to see him at an Iowa or at a Power 5 school. And the advantage Iowa has over Texas Tech and Kentucky, if there is one, and Gonzaga, is that he'd be coming to play for a conference that, to me, has boasted the best big men in the Big Ten for years, right? Well, I mean, I just think that that's pretty much consensus. If you're going to argue that, I'd love to hear your basis, because besides Oscar Tshiebwe this year, the Big Ten had the best big guys in Kofi Cockburn, Zach Edey, and Trevion Williams. That and then before those guys, it was Liam Robbins and Luka Garza, and I'm trying to think of the other kid from the other big kid from Minnesota that played with Liam. I'm drawing a blank. And then the Maryland's had really good bigs. So just go down the list. The Big Ten is kind of known for its big man play. Now the Big Ten's going to be missing some of these guys. Edey's probably coming back. It sounds like Trevion Williams is gone. We don't know yet about Kofi Cockburn. Cliff Amore is back for Rutgers. That's a huge return for the Scarlet Knights. But overall, I mean, this would be a real opportunity for AMAC to show off his hopefully offensive development, because he does need to develop his offensive game a bit more, I think, before he's going to have an opportunity to be a first-round draft pick in the NBA draft. Chris has Joe T and Nunji together as Xavier would have been sweet to see. And yeah, Xavier was interested in Joe T at the time, according to some reports, but did not happen. The bottom line, though, is both of those guys have an opportunity. I mean, Jack Nunji's going to have one more year. He's going to have an opportunity if he can take another jump. I know he's older. He's had 2 knee injuries, which hurts your chances. He's going to have a chance to find an NBA roster. I'm telling you, he put up the numbers this year. One more year with a guy like Sean Miller, who knows how to develop guys, whether you like the person Sean Miller or not. Gets a year with Jack Nunji. He's going to have an opportunity to possibly get drafted in a year. Let's get to our next caller here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey, good evening.
Good evening, Lomansky. How are you, sir?
Good. Have you gotten any word back from the Iowa Athletic Department about your inquiries to John Budmeyer, or are they silent?
That's a good question. Not related to the transfer portal, but I have no problem answering it. I did reach back. No, I was told yesterday. I'll just be transparent with this. I was told yesterday that they would get back to me this morning. I never got a phone call, so I called in the afternoon, got in touch with someone else with compliance. They forwarded me to the person that apparently is in charge of football-related compliance questions, and I have not gotten a response from that individual yet. So I'll keep trying, Lomansky. I want to be able to provide that information, because I do think maybe people think I'm making too much of it. I do think it's an interesting story.
I think it's one of the best things you've done since I started listening to your program about 10 months ago. I think it's your journalistic inquisitive interest is shared by many fans, and you teed it up for me really nicely, because you said the word transparency. And I'm just disappointed in the communication out of the football program as I compare it to the Iowa basketball program. And I got some facts about that. And one of the things is that if you ever listened, and I'm going to go right back to what you talked about, I've listened twice to Brian's talk when he was interviewed with the other 2 assistant coaches. And I listened to it twice. And I'm starting to wonder if my brain cells are less than the average Iowa fan. I'm not the best talker that calls into your show, and I know I talk too much and I lose my focus. I have never heard so many run-on sentences, lose track of the question, go into left field about some other topic, come back. In fact, in one of the questions, and every Iowa fan should listen to that, he comes back and he goes, "Did I answer your question?" This is Brian talking. "Did I answer your question?" And the guy goes, "I don't know. I'm going to have to read the transcript." Do you remember that, Corey?
I did. I got that. Yes.
I got to go back and read the transcript. And Brian says, "I don't think they have any transcript." And he's smiling and joking like he's a stand-up comedian. I'd be damn embarrassed. And now compare that to Billy Taylor, who took over for Fran when he was out during the season, who got interviewed on a program by Dolph and Bobby Hansen. Just the right amount of commentary, a lot less than mine. I ramble on worse than any caller you got, Corey, because I'm kind of a passionate fan. I get too fired up.
You ramble on more than Drill MVP?
I think, it's a good race between DeReal and MVP.
It's okay.
It'd be a Kentucky Derby between DeReal and I.
All right, I'll take that.
But Billy Taylor, he's succinct. He's right on the question. He answers it. Sherm, and I forgot his last name.
Dillard.
The other, Dillard, he's the same way. And, you know, I kind of miss Hayden Fry because he was so humorous, and those are great memories of how he talked to the press. And if you listen to Fran on his post game, he's not Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo is a little wordy, and he likes to hear himself talk. And Fran's a little succinct, but Fran's got the question. He answers the question. He gets back to his kids. And you compare the basketball program to the football program transparency and what you're going through. Just God bless the Iowa basketball program and their assistant coaches and how they handle the program and going in the right direction. Because every Iowa fan should listen to Brian answer those questions. Because I know the real MVP and Corey Bratta and I could do a better job fielding questions. I don't even want to listen to a third time. It's embarrassing.
Well, you listened to it twice. You must be a glutton for punishment because you listened to it twice.
And I would really. Have you ever talked to any of those guys that asked the questions about their take on that interview? Have you done that?
No, I have not. I have not. No, I don't. You know, I don't think a lot of other people, and maybe I made too much of it, but you seem to kind of share some of my feelings on that press conference. I was the only person that I heard or saw on Twitter that had a problem with that press conference. It just left a weird feeling in my mind or my gut, I guess. But no, nobody really else. I think most people really think that Brian is kind of a charming guy behind the podium, and you know, that's kind of as you know, Lemansky, I have nothing against Brian Ferentz as a person, but I do think there was a lot of filibustering in that press conference, and it just didn't inspire any confidence in me as a fan. It didn't. It's not like I was sitting there waiting for material so I could come on here and rip them. No, I was trying to be inspired as a fan, as an Iowa football fan. I wanted to have something that was encouraging, and I just didn't find it.
Well, if you go to Iowa and you went through the rhetoric program and the writing program, which is nationally wide, highly thought of, you would have to give up and give speeches, impromptu speeches without giving the subject in front of the class. And you'd have to speak. I think the first time was 10 minutes. Eventually, you had to do a 20-minute stand-up speech to the audience. And it reflects on recruiting, watching that thing. Jeepers, I think, you know, I've heard, and did you listen to the other two assistant coaches?
I did.
Abdul Hodge and the other guy?
Yep, I did.
Compare and contrast those three.
Yeah. And Abdul Hodge is, you know, this is his first press conference ever at Iowa as a coach. So
they're impressive. They're not too lengthy. They're informative. They're right on the question. And you can watch all three of them at the same place. And you know, I think I even typed in, I feel sorry for Brian. I wish somebody would understand you know, help the poor guy out. I'm not even talking about being an offensive coordinator. Help the guy out to look good in public. I mean, I feel for the guy.
Well, here's the deal. I think if I was to guess what's going on, why he looked so uncomfortable in that press conference, I just think it's because he is. I think he knows he's under a lot of scrutiny. And, you know, regardless of the people that are going to defend the move to make him quarterback's coach, I think he probably deep down knows that he's in over his head. And I hope I'm wrong. I really want to be wrong. I keep saying that. I really want to be wrong because I want to enjoy Iowa football 2022. Now, here's what I will say. Let me just defend. I'm not saying you're bashing communications, but I will say this. Steve Rowe, Chris Brewer, and Matt Weitzel are tremendous communicators for the athletic department. Now, the difference is they are not in charge of compliance. So, you know, if you're looking for a compliance answer or a rules answer, you're not going to go through those three guys. But when you have a question, those three guys are very much readily available, and they work for both basketball and football. But I agree with you. I'm not trying to rip compliance either. I'm just telling you what's happened because I've promised like 8 times now. I've said, well, I want to, talk about John Budmeyer, and I think it's a really intriguing storyline. And every time I say that, I keep thinking, well, I'm going to get a call tomorrow to kind of seal the story so I know exactly what I'm talking about and have enough information to talk and sound somewhat educated, and it just doesn't seem like it's a concern. But I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to hopefully get that information tomorrow, and once I get it, I'll talk about it.
I got 2 more points, and I'll get off the line. The one is this. Chuck Long publicly has stated that he thought the role, and I forgot the guy's name, that in the summer that this helped Iowa QBs. I think he's helped several, I think, at least more than just Petrus out east.
Rasiopi.
Yeah, Rasiopi. And Chuck Long has publicly stated that he thought the role of people like Rasiopi, he didn't name Rasiopi, but he talked about, he went to the NFL for the Detroit Lions. He talked about the role of guys like that in a college program. And he said he didn't really believe that they could give much help, and he didn't believe in it in the off season between your freshman, sophomore, junior, senior years and such. He said the role for those guys is when you graduated and used up your eligibility, when you're preparing for the NFL draft in that summer, when you're ineligible for college, that's when those guys are useful. And so he didn't believe that was any help at all. So I guess we have to, in John Budmeyer, we trust. And the other thing about, I keep harping on transparency. Back when the move was made to put Jordan at the point, and I'm a Joe T fan, and I actually got communication from Fan McCaffrey himself because I inquired about that move. And I said, it's a mid-season. I'm sure you're going to get some flack about it, but I trust the coaching staff. And I said, you got to hear from somebody that believes in what you're doing. And I got a response back from Fran McCaffrey. So I tell you what, folks on this chat, be very proud of the Iowa program, because he doesn't know me from a blade of grass. And he thought enough of that to, within 24 hours, we had a short communication regarding that subject. And that's very impressive to me.
What did he say, Lomansky?
He just said, thanks for being a great Hawk. And he, talked about the dedication of Bohannon to the program. And what's interesting is, I think that's, he's very honest about, if you go back and look when Fran McCaffrey was hired, in his introductory speech, he talked about honesty and running a clean program. And that's why he said whatever he said to Joe Toussaint, why Joe Toussaint left. And that, I'll bet you Joe Toussaint, if he gets asked about the Iowa program, because he was treated honestly and couldn't guarantee him minutes, he's going to speak highly of the Iowa program. In fact, I'm glad he left, and he had to leave because he had the 8th amount of minutes, the same as Connor McCaffrey, and he's been here several years. I don't think anybody that's listening to chat with his talent level being 8th in minutes with Connor, just, the writing's kind of on the wall. He probably has pro basketball aspirations, and he needs to be seen and improve his game, and you got to be out on the floor.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have personally, I don't have a problem with Connor having the same amount of minutes, because I think Connor is really productive and I think he's underrated. I've become more of a Connor fan, but I will say this in regards to what you said and, the Fran correspondence back and forth. I do think that's something that Kirk is really good at as well. I know whenever I've had, and I've had very few correspondence with Kirk, but just through the years, just here and there with different things, when I was doing radio, and then when I started this, and I've communicated a little bit with Kirk, he's always been by far the most accessible coach on the staff. So I'll give Kirk some credit there, and it's good to hear about Fran as well. I think Fran does it the right way. I do think I think he inspires confidence with who he's willing to recruit. And I'm not just trying to just defend Iowa basketball to the grave, but I do. That's part of the reason people ask me all the time, why aren't you as critical of Fran as you are of Kirk? That's not, Lomansky, if you've been watching me for 10 months, you would probably know that 8 months ago, I was probably more critical of Fran. I really probably was, because we hadn't seen much of a change defensively. We had an Iowa football team that, although Ken O'Keefe wasn't doing great, that was prior to the Brian Ferentz promotion. So the pendulum for me has swung. I try to evaluate each program individually, and my issue right now with Iowa football is I don't think that this move, which is a very important move, making Brian Ferentz the quarterback coach, selecting a quarterback coach, selecting the future of your offense, I don't think that was best for the program. That's my opinion. People can disagree with it. With basketball, I saw a Big Ten tournament championship. I see them going after the maybe the best big guy in the portal. And they're bringing in a really high 4-star kid next year at point guard. And I understand Xavier Wampa's coming to Iowa football. I get it. Iowa football's been recruiting well also, but that's why I feel the way I do. But it's good to hear that from you, Lemansky. I'm glad that you've had nothing but good correspondence with Fran McCaffrey. And Joe T will get playing time at West Virginia. I don't know if he'll be a starter, but he will get plenty of time.
And I guess I don't want anybody to misread my Connor comments, but it's a very deep Iowa team last year, and I think they're going to have a lot of depth next year. I'm a Connor fan because I kind of wasn't a good offensive player in basketball, and I appreciate everything else he does. You know, how you're portrayed in the public is why Don Patterson and Mark Rogers on your flanks and your performance, it's, 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. And, and God bless the assistant coaches that are good publicly in speaking, because it does, image is everything. That's why we wear Pittsburgh Steeler unis. As silly as that sounds to the chat people, it's part of the whole puzzle. And I'll hang up and listen to the program.
Appreciate the call, Lemansky. Call anytime. And yeah, I appreciate all those comments. And here's what I'll say too about the whole, how do players view the program? I don't know what CJ Frederick's going to say about Iowa 5 months down the road, but here's what I will say. Everybody that I've heard from, whether either be personally or through the grapevine, has had nothing but good things to say about Fran as a person, as former players, right? Whether they be at Siena or at Lehigh or wherever, Iowa. There have been some criticisms about maybe at one time they didn't practice defense as much as they should. That I think that's probably changed to a degree. But as far as it relates to guys who have been at Iowa the length of their careers or moved on to another school, I don't remember the last time I've heard a former player really knock Fran. The closest we've had was Devin Marble getting upset at the Iowa program, a year ago, because his dad's jersey hadn't been retired. And I don't blame Devin for being upset. And I don't think that was projected to or towards Fran. I think that was more towards Gary Barta and the administration. And I don't blame Devin, and I think that's been smoothed over. Fran McCaffrey has always been very complimentary of Dev Marble. So that, just for the record. But here's what I'll say. One of the guys, and I saw Don made a comment, and I don't want to assume you're being sarcastic, Don, but I'm going to kind of guess you are. Dickerson was a transfer. So Trey Dickerson was a transfer. I got into it with someone on Twitter today because somebody said, well, the only transfers that we've gotten with Fran have been Rebracha and Evelyn. That's just not true. It's factually incorrect. When people say factually incorrect things and they're not willing to admit they're wrong, I have a problem with that. Okay? Trey Dickerson was a transfer. I get he didn't work out here. Never played extensively. Bryce Cartwright was a transfer. And see, the rebuttal is, well, they were JUCO. Who cares if they're JUCO? Who cares where they're from? Don't just change. Do not change the standard. Do not change the crux of the argument when you've been proven wrong. All right? And my point is, Trey Dickerson, he was a very highly touted JUCO player when he came here. And he did end up at Georgetown and was okay at Georgetown. He didn't work out here. I get it. I've had multiple conversations with Trey Dickerson. We had him on the show a couple times. I believe it was when he was here and then after he left. Okay, I think I've maybe talked with him over the air twice after he left. And I'd be happy. He's always a really cool kid to talk to. I shouldn't call him a kid anymore. He's probably mid-20s, upper 20s by now. But he's a really nice young man. And I asked him straight up, and this was after the 2020 off-field issues with Iowa football. I asked him, did you ever feel uncomfortable with Iowa basketball? Because I was curious. There's a kid who left Iowa. Trey Dickerson had been all over the country, had been in big cities, was kind of a big city kid before he got here. And I just asked him, did you ever feel uncomfortable whether it be from a racial standpoint or just from a coaching standpoint. I mean, you left because you weren't getting playing time. And he literally sat there and told me, no, I have no problem with Fran McCaffery whatsoever. He brought up a story about him coming back to play against Iowa in the NIT. And he embraced Fran, and Fran said it was good, good to see him, and he was glad that he had success. That's the way it should be. And that's the way it's going to be, I think, with Joe Toussaint and Josh Agundale. I'm not going to bring Austin Ash into the mix. Listen, Austin Ash was not, he's playing for a 6th year. I saw some people upset about him transferring or concerned. Well, that means that we've had 3 transfers. Austin Ash is going to be a 6th year guy. Okay. He had a scholarship here. He was guaranteed a year, right? He was given a year on scholarship. Believe you me, he's a Hawkeye. Okay. It's not bad blood. And I wish him the best. Same thing with Riley Till and Michael Bear when they left. But my point is, Trey Dickerson had nothing but good things to say about Fran, about his teammates, about the coaches. And I would guess that Joe Toussaint, Josh Agundale, Cordell Pemsel, Jack Nungy, all these guys who leave. And by the way, it's not just happening here, guys. It's happening everywhere. The portal is a factor everywhere, right? I keep reading the stat that last year, each team in Division I lost an average of 4 guys. That's just reality here, folks. And I've said it before with football. I'll say it with basketball. If you're not willing to use the portal to your advantage in 2022, you are going to fall behind. That's just a natural. That's just the arms race. That is just the arms race of college basketball. But that makes me a big Fran McCaffery fan. He at times he's deserved to be criticized defensively. He had problems, his teams had problems with rebounding this year at times. He's had anger issues at times. I think that's fair, right? He's had problems with anger at times. I think he's toned it down. But I'm a Fran McCaffery guy because of that. And I'm not saying I'm not a Kirk guy. I'm disappointed with some recent moves. Very disappointed with recent moves. But I appreciate that call from Lemansky. The call line is back open. 515-635-1601. Enjoying the conversation, by the way, folks. And I know I haven't gotten to all the chats yet. We got about 80 people on. If you have not already done so and you're here, maybe you're here regularly or you're here for the first time, please share this show on social media. Helps the show to grow, helps our stream to grow. Would love to get more than 80 people on here this evening. And we've been on for about an hour. It's flown by. Be happy to be here through the 8 o'clock hour with folks, but hopefully we can get plenty of support through this next hour and power through. Again, the line is open, 515-635-1601. And let me get back to the chat. I see a couple comments, questions about transfers. So Steve brings up Nigel Pack. So yeah, Nigel Pack is the kid from Kansas State who's in the portal. Again, one of the highest touted kids in the transfer portal. I have not heard Iowa connected with him at all. Iowa does have somewhat of a connection, I guess, because Tony Perkins played at, let's see if I get this right. Tony was at, now I lost it. I'm trying to remember Tony Perkins High School. They played for rival high schools in Indianapolis, okay? Tony Perkins knows Nigel Pack. They knew each other from their high school days. They competed against one another. So there is a connection there, but I've not heard Iowa connected to him. Obviously, with his three-point shooting prowess, he's a really good three-point shooter. I would love that. I'd love for Iowa to go after him, but they have a lot of competition, even if they were willing to do that, as they do with a guy like Vardaz Amack. But it would be great if you could get someone like Nigel Pack. But I also think Fran's really confident in the future with Dasonte Bowen. Had they brought in a guy like Rob Finney, he'd have been here 1 year. You get 1 year, you get a year to develop Dasonte Bowen, whether Finney starts or comes off the bench. Ulis, what happens with him, we won't know because Finney's not coming here. But it's different when you're bringing in a guy with multiple years left. Now, Nigel Pack is good enough. He may end up in the NBA in a year. That's possible. But it's possible he doesn't, and he comes back, and that could cause some problems. It could cause a logjam there at point guard again. The good news is several years ago, folks, we were talking about point guard as if it was a real weakness. And all of a sudden, Iowa's got point guards leaving, and they've still got depth there. I mean, they got Ulis and Bowen coming back, and they just lost Toussaint and Bohannon. I give Frank credit there too, because again, there was a time where Iowa was really struggling to recruit quality point guards, and I think they're doing pretty good right now at that position, and they're developing them. Joe Toussaint, he didn't have a single Power 5 offer out of high school. This time around, after he's played a couple of years in college, he's got West Virginia calling, Xavier, St. John's, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. I give credit to Iowa there for developing someone like Joe Toussaint. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, this is Vincent. How you doing?
Good, Vincent. How are you?
Not too bad. Just want to touch on just two things. I know we were talking about or transfers that have come in. I know Utah was also a transfer from Wisconsin, and he came to play for Fran. But the reason I called in, it's not necessarily transfer related, but it is basketball. I know you've stated it in the past, and I've heard others in the basketball world talk about it. And I just wanted to – I know there's a lot of folks that think the Big Ten Conference is the best conference out there in college basketball. Just me personally, I couldn't disagree more. I know we have a lot of basketball teams that are good, but we're not the best conference. I know we like to boast that, but we haven't backed that up in over 20 years as we haven't had, a single Big Ten team win a national championship. So I just wanted to throw that out there and let other people comment on it. And if you wanted to give your take on it.
I'll say this, Vincent. I agree with you. I don't think anybody should dogmatically state that the Big Ten is the best conference. I'm concerned with the Big Ten in March. I also don't think that we should measure everything by a tournament where you're one and done. But you're right. And when you have a sample size like they've had these last 2 years, and you have a bunch of teams get in and nobody makes it far, that is a concern. I would urge you, though, to take a look at something like the ACC Big Ten Challenge, which the Big Ten has largely dominated in recent time, against a conference that people have long thought to be the best conference in the country in the ACC. And those matchups are a lot more even because they're selected preseason based upon projected finishes. And the Big Ten has won that challenge. So I'm not going to say the Big Ten is the best conference, but I'm not going to say it's definitely not either. It's better than the Pac-12. It's right there with the Big 12. The ACC looked a lot better in the tournament, but Vincent, the ACC was down this year big time. And I get North Carolina, Duke looked pretty good once they got to March, but the ACC underperformed all year. I still think the Big 10 and the Big 12 collectively were the two best conferences in the country. The SEC didn't really impress me. I'll say the conference that I think could have a stake a claim to be the best conference that nobody's talking about, and that's the Big East with, teams like Creighton and Villanova and Providence. That's a really good conference. So I get what you're saying. I do think there's just too much emphasis placed on the NCAA tournament.
No, I agree, and I also I'm a proponent just as you when it comes to for March Madness. I don't like the one and done either, and not just because Iowa got bounced by Richmond. Richmond just outplayed us, but I'm not a big proponent of that either. But I don't know of another solution when it comes to March Madness. How you slate those games, if you could even do series with those, or how you'd even try to not rectify that, but make it more, give the teams that are in there, I guess, maybe a better opportunity to prove, what kind of team they are versus having an off night and then getting bounced. But that's why they call it, again, March Madness.
You'd have to shrink, Vincent, you'd have to shrink the field, and that's not going to happen. There's too much money involved with the way it's set up now. You'd have to shrink the field to, maybe cut it in half, and that's probably not even enough. You'd probably have to get it down to a 16-team field, which would then be, 4 rounds? But the problem is that's a lot of basketball, too. So that's not going to happen. I agree with you. That's what makes March Madness great. That's what makes it a curse. I think that was a quote from the Teed Up podcast with Patrick and Connor today. But, yeah, it is difficult, and you got to learn how to play in March, though. There are teams that have coaches that have found the knack to winning in March. Tom Izzo's a guy who's kind of had that reputation, although he hasn't done it as much lately. I guess he did it during the Zion Williamson year, but there are teams that have a knack of winning in March. Jay Wright's a perfect example of that for Villanova.
Absolutely.
Man, they win a lot once you get to March.
Yeah, they do. I agree with you also on the Big East. I don't even want to say underrated, just because since they're on the East Coast, they don't get a lot of airtime. They're not as widely publicized games as you'd find with the Big Ten or the Big 12. But anyway, as far as the I keep hearing, and it's probably more so Big Ten coaches just hyping up the league, but you keep hearing about the Big Ten conference is the best. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, hell, we can't get anybody past the Sweet 16, let alone to the national championship game. And the last time we won one was in 2000. So I think it's a little bit not unfair. I just think they're gloating a little too much, the Big Ten conference, and we shouldn't be doing that until we actually bring home, a national championship.
Well, I don't think you're going to hear that nearly as much this next year, Vincent. I don't think you're going to hear it nearly as much.
And lastly, I did want to give praise to Coach McCaffrey. I know he got a lot of heat this year at the beginning of the season, yet still with the group of guys that he had and what he lost, brought home a Big Ten championship. That was awesome to see as a Hawk fan. So just again, want to give him a ton of credit. And as always, Corey, I haven't had a chance to tune in as much lately, but love the show, love the podcast. Hopefully, did you have surgery on a shoulder or arm, it looks like?
Yeah, I had a labrum repair, so we're 3 weeks out from it.
Well, get healed up. As always, most of us fans always look forward to the show and love to call in. So as usual, greatly enjoy the platform for you.
Vincent, I got one more question for you. Do we agree now that Keegan Murray is a lottery pick?
I was absolutely proven wrong, but I love that aspect of it. So to answer your question, yes, he is absolutely a lottery pick.
Good.
Right now, they have him projected anywhere between 4 and 8.
Yeah, I saw it. I think it was ESPN's mock guy. Was it ESPN? I think it was ESPN's mock guy had him at 4, I think today. And I keep seeing that. Yeah. I keep seeing 4. Now, maybe he'll slip down, but I see him ahead of guys like Jaden Ivey and Johnny Davis in almost every mock draft. So we'll see. He's definitely a lottery pick. It's an opportunity, as I keep saying. It's disappointing that Iowa has not been able to win in the NCAA tournament, but they did have March success in the Big Ten tournament, and they did produce a guy who's going to be a lottery pick. That only helps recruiting.
You're spot on. And I was just looking at NBA rosters yesterday. I'm not an NBA fan because I like to watch the defense played, but I was looking at rosters. And what you see Fran McCaffrey doing with the program and how he's allowing the players to flourish, you're seeing it on NBA rosters now too, where you got Tyler Cooks with the Bulls, Wieskamp with the Spurs, Garza obviously with the Pistons. You're going to see the first Murray go in this year's draft, possibly another next year, just depending on the progression of the twin brother. But it can only help us in recruiting because you're seeing more and more Iowa players on basketball rosters, which shows that one, Brand knows how to coach, and he's also putting the players in a position to be successful. And as a player, as a prospect and recruit, that's what you want to see. How can you project yourself in college and beyond? So for recruits that want to go to a system or play style that's fast, that scores points, and can really put you on a national radar, Franz, I think, has done an excellent job with that.
And Vincent, let's remember, if they can get Fardaz Amack, he's going to be on draft boards next year if he doesn't go this year.
Yeah, the first I heard of him, Corey, is actually from your show. So I kind of did a little research on him over the past couple days. So I'd be curious to see if he does come, what he can bring. But yeah, the first I'd heard of him is just through your show. So obviously you've done some homework on him.
Well, it's a big one. They're swinging for the fences with him, and I think we'll find out. He's coming to Iowa. That's one thing I didn't mention. He's visiting all these schools, including Iowa, in the next couple of weeks. So I think we'll know sooner. I mean, we got to know at some point because he's going to have to make a decision whether he wants to pull out of the draft, keep his name in there. I think he will pull out. He's going to make a decision. A lot of these kids are making decisions quicker than I thought. We just had the kid from UNI, Noah Carter, committed to Mizzou. That's another one that I thought maybe Iowa would think about getting involved with, but these kids are committing fairly early. So the only way this comes back to bite Iowa is if Fardaz goes somewhere else and he waits a long time to tell them. That would not be good.
Yeah, that would, you're right. Wouldn't be good for us. Was it, I know you said you'd spoken with someone in the football ops department. The name may not ring a bell to you, but was it Scott Southmaid, out of curiosity, who you'd reached out to?
No.
Okay.
That's not the individual that I was told is in charge of communicating football related compliance questions.
Gotcha. Okay. No worries. Well, again, get healed up, Corey, and as usual, or as always, greatly appreciate the call.
Thanks, Vincent. Appreciate the call. And Yeah, all good points. Some great calls tonight. I guess if I wait a long time to come on the air, and I mean talking a long break from doing live shows, I guess that helps the questions. It makes better questions. Makes for better questions, I should say. I don't like to mention this a lot, but I do have the obligation to do this because it's what keeps me going. It keeps the channel going. If you want to donate to this channel, first of all, I want to say thank you in advance for doing that. You can donate in the description below. You can also, you should have a link on your YouTube app or your browser, wherever you're listening, to donate by super chat, super sticker, super thanks. You can do that as well. All of that is appreciated. So thank you in advance for helping to support this channel however you see fit. So thank you for that. Doug brings up Cooper Koch making his decision this fall. Yeah, and that's the reasoning as to why some people think they need to just pocket these extra scholarships, because you've got potential in 23. You got Owen Freeman coming in. Cooper Koch is a real possibility. I still don't know why you wouldn't take, if you have a three-point shooter who's a grad transfer who has 1 year left, take him. Like, who cares? I mean, you get that scholarship open in a year anyways. Take him. And Vincent, yes, he brought up Jared Utoff being from Wisconsin. The reasoning this individual had on Twitter as to why he doesn't count is because he's from Iowa. So again, fans like to move the needle in the direction that supports their narrative. In other words, JUCOs don't count, players from in the state don't count. So they got to be high major kids, and they can't come from the state of Iowa, or they don't count for the transfer reputation of Fran. I just don't get that. But yes, you're right. Jared Utoff was from Wisconsin after he started his career in Madison. Doug's, I hate rumors because supposedly the 24 class could be amazing until they're signed and on campus, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, 23 and 24, Doug. I mean, Owen Freeman looks really good. Now, we'll see. You know, Josh Dix is a kid who I like a lot. He's coming in this year. Question about his health because he had that compound fracture in his leg. But I keep talking about them needing to go out and get another three-point shooter. If Josh Dix is healed and he comes in and can just put up numbers as a freshman, which is hard to do. It has happened. It's rare. But he can come in and make a lot of threes his freshman year, like, say, Bohannon did his freshman year. So no, maybe they don't need to go get somebody as a three-point shooter. But if you're going to put your trust and your faith in a kid who is not even, well, he's probably walking now, right? He's walking, but a kid who really suffered a pretty traumatic injury, and he's going to be coming in as a freshman, that might be a bit dicey and a bit risky. Tom, basketball is just a crapshoot from season to season. Oh, I don't know about that, Tom. I mean, I understand why you may say that, because it's hard to predict what happens in March. That's true. But if you look at the success Iowa has sustained, and the 1 year they didn't make the tournament over the past several years was the COVID year. And they were going to be a 5 or a 6 that year, no question about it, maybe even a 4. So I give Fran a lot of credit. He has basically turned this into an every year tournament team. This was the year, folks. This past season was the year where people thought Iowa was going to be down. Maybe they'll get to the NIT. They went out and got to the tournament. So that is a huge, huge victory. And you got to give Fran credit for it. Drill MVP, this is a good question. Thoughts on being in the Emerald Classic? Man, I'm so glad you brought this up, Drill MVP, because we have not had a chance to talk about it. As you may or may not know, Iowa was announced. It was officially announced through the University of Iowa and through the Emerald Coast Classic that they will be playing in that event in 2022. So this Thanksgiving, they haven't played in an early season tournament in several years. And so this is a kind of a breath of fresh air. I believe this is a panhandle tournament, right? I can't remember where exactly, what city. Is it Nice, Florida? I'm getting that town correct. So the 4 teams that are involved in, and I can put this up. Let's go ahead and throw this up on here for people who are wondering what we're talking about. The Emerald Coast Classic in 2022, and keep in mind, I'm working with one arm here, guys, so give me an extra second. The Emerald Coast Classic is comprised of 4 teams, including Iowa, and I'm going to throw the other 3 teams up here as well. And I think it's a good field. It's not a field that's going to blow you away, but it's a field with a potential of having a really good final round. I mean, to me, it's easy to predict the first round matchups already. But here are the teams in the Emerald Coast Classic for 2022. It's Iowa, Cal, Clemson, and TCU. TCU is going to be a top 25 team preseason. It's a team that got cheated out of that game against Arizona. For everybody who ripped me for picking TCU in my bracket over Arizona, go back and watch that game. They should have won the game, went to overtime, got cheated by the officials. TCU is going to be really good this next year. I don't know anything about Cal. Cal was, I think, 12 and 20 this past season. So, we'll see who plays who there. Now, Clemson, I'm looking at Clemson's 2020 record. They were about a 500 team. They went 17 and 16 in the ACC. So, on paper, without looking at who those teams have returning, Clemson would be a better resume building game than Cal. If you had to put a gun to my head now, because TCU is projected to be pretty darn good and they're kind of the trendy team in the Big 12 right now, I would guess that the Emerald Coast Classic may pair them with Clemson and Iowa gets Cal. But either way, it's a potential of an Iowa-TCU championship game. There's no way they put Iowa and TCU against each other in the first round. There's just no way that happens. That would be kind of weird. I guess it could. And either way, they get to play them, so I guess it wouldn't matter. But I just don't see any possibility that they pair Iowa and TCU in the first round. So I like the field, Darrell MVP, because of TCU. But boy, TCU, this was announced that this report that Iowa was playing in this event had been announced months ago. And TCU really didn't come on until late in the season and in the tournament. So Iowa fans should be thankful that the Horned Frogs got good fast, and it'll be the first time Iowa basketball plays TCU since that NIT loss several years ago in Carver, game I was at. Really, really disappointing loss because Iowa had a pretty good team that year that just missed out on the tournament. But thank you for that question, Drill MVP. It's a good topic, and I'm sure we'll preview that event when it gets here. Joe says he was sad to see Josh Agundale transfer. Fun to see him playing a role in the championship game. Absolutely, as did Riley Mulvey. Both those guys played big. Doug Moore says, Destin, thank you. Wasn't Nice, Florida. I don't even know where Nice, Florida is. Destin, Florida. That is a good tournament, and I don't know that I'll be going. I have no interest in going down to the Panhandle. I just don't. But I think Iowa fans will travel. That's going to be a warm time of year in Florida, so it'll be a fun event. Steve says Kirk will retire before he goes all in on the portal. He's above it per him. I do have a problem, Steve, and I talked about it during my show with Mark Rogers, the fact that Iowa football has brought in one transfer so far, and they could bring in more. But they brought in one transfer, which is last in the Big Ten. And yes, I know they haven't lost many, so that's going to be what the coaching staff falls back on. But one transfer, and it's a third-string tight end. That's what Steven Stiliano says. He's a third-string tight end this year because they've got Luke Lachey and Sam Laporta. Now, maybe he beats out Lachey. I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it. But you got to use the portal. You just got to, and that's what I like about Fran. Fran's willing to do it. Now, Fran is selective, and I can understand fans who wish that Fran was in contact with more big guys right now or just more guys in general. But I do like what Fran's doing in the transfer portal. DC Hawk, thank you for this, DC Hawk. Appreciate this super sticker. Thank you very much for that, sir. And helps the channel grow, as I always say. Probably get tired of me saying that, but it's the absolute truth. I do appreciate everybody's donations, and thank you again, DC Hawkeye, for making that generous donation. And if you want to make a donation, you're welcome to do that by super chat, super thanks, super sticker, or in the comment section. Filter through here a couple of the comments that I missed earlier. Doug says he hates to say it, but the tournament is awesome. And I agree. The tournament is awesome. It's just, it is hard when you're an Iowa fan and it hasn't worked out in your favor recently. And yeah, I mean, I think mentality, you use the word choke. We use that term a lot. I don't think Iowa choked this year, but I do think it's such a tedious thing. I mean, we're talking from a physicality standpoint, stamina standpoint. If you're not ready to go, or you have your star player go down for one game, it can kill you. That's just the nature of the tournament. And that's why I think we just overreact way too much with basketball, and maybe we underreact with football, because we haven't won a Big Ten championship outright since, 85 in football? And I know it's hard. I get it. It's hard to do. And you can say, well, Iowa basketball hasn't won a Big Ten championship in how many years? They have won 2 Big Ten tournament championships over the past 20 years. So that is something. I know it's not a lot, but they won one this year. M. Finn says the Big Ten ACC Challenge is great for TV, preparing teams for conference play, but what happens in March matters a lot more than what happens in November, and I agree with that. The reason I brought up the ACC Big Ten Challenge, though, is because we're trying to rate conferences, and are we really going to rank an entire conference based upon those individual teams' one-game performances in the NCAA tournament? I just don't think that's fair, but I understand where you're coming from. Bill, he thinks the start of the Big Ten tournament and its proximity and closeness, time-wise, to the NCAA tournament and the size of the Big Ten is part of the reason for the lack of success. I'd like to see the Big Ten tournament. And I really like the Big Ten tournament, Bill, and I don't think it's going anywhere for the record. But I understand where you're coming from. I do wish they'd move it back. I wish they'd have the championship game on Saturday. I don't know why we need to do this Sunday championship thing. It clearly doesn't help seeding. The only thing it's going to do is put a disadvantage for those two teams who are playing in the Big Ten championship game. Whether you're playing in the NCAA tournament or the NIT, like the two teams that are playing on Sunday in the Big Ten are likely going to be playing in the postseason somewhere. Likely both are going to be NCAA tournament teams, but it does not help either team. Now, Purdue did make a little run in the NCAA tournament, so they played Sunday as well. Richmond played Sunday. Remember, we can't make excuses because Richmond did play Sunday and they still beat Iowa. Lemansky says Fran is good friends with Coach Painter. Painter taking heat for the tournament loss. Purdue is as good of a program as any Big Ten team. Agree with that. Doug says we go this hard after AMAC need to get him. Yeah. I mean, there's no question. It seems to me that they're going all out on this kid, and for good reason. I am trying to not overreact to the fact that I haven't heard Iowa connected with other big guys. I just haven't. Maybe they are, but usually these things leak out. I said the same thing about football a couple months ago, that if Iowa had been in contact with someone in the portal at quarterback, you probably would have heard about it. There was a rumor that Iowa was interested in Adrian Martinez. I think that was a Twitter rumor, a message board rumor. That was never substantiated. Of all the quarterbacks Iowa could have pursued, I wouldn't think Adrian Martinez would be at the top of the list, although I think he would be an upgrade of what Iowa has now. But I do believe that Iowa, at some point, you'd hear their name connected to another big guy. And if AMAC or if Fran believes AMAC's going somewhere else, I have no doubt you're going to start hearing Iowa's name connected to other players because he's not going to walk away empty from the portal. Those 3 scholarships, at least one of those are going to be used up, maybe 2. Again, Finney is down to Cincinnati and Butler. Okay, so Finney's off the table. And I know we talked about this earlier. The 2 players that, as of right now, have not made a decision or have not trimmed their list down, and players that have had Iowa mentioned as a program who's shown interest. Jaden Delaire, 6'9" forward out of Stanford. Averaged 10-4 this past season, averaged closer to 14 in 2021. He's a guy who could potentially fill a bit of the void of Keegan Murray. I don't think he's definitely not a dominant scorer. He's a really good defender. And he provides good length. I think he's would help with the press. So, you could grab, imagine if Iowa grabs Delaire and AMAC, who the other, obviously the biggest target is. That would be a slam dunk. Now, I don't expect that to happen. I do think Iowa's got a great shot at AMAC. I keep saying that. Delaire is just so hard because I just don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's dozens of schools interested in him. He's a pretty highly wanted kid. I mean, he's a kid who's averaging 10-4 in the Pac-12. He's going to be recruited by a lot of schools. He's got his name in the NBA draft process. Fardaws AMAC, of course, 6'11", 245 out of UVSU. That's Utah Valley State, transferred from Mercer, originally from Canada, family from Afghanistan. Really talented kid, rebounding machine. Averaged 14 boards this year, 15 boards a year ago. Bumped his free throw percentage up 10% from 62% to 72%. Let me give you this, and I mentioned this on the video. If you haven't watched my kind of synopsis of Fardaws AMAC, definitely check it out on this channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Posted it a couple days ago. But if you're curious on if Fardaws would be able to perform at this level against high major competition, here are a couple numbers for you. 2020, his first ever game at UVSU, against a Power 5 opponent was at Utah. He had 7 and 9, so 7 points, 9 boards. 9 boards is pretty impressive. I don't care who you're playing. but not this is not a stat sheet popping number or pair of figures. He also played at St. John's. Both of these games were losses, by the way, for Utah Valley. Had 10 points, 13 boards at St. John's that same year. This past year, played at Washington in less than 30 minutes. Fardaws Aimaq had 15 points, 15 rebounds at Washington, and his team won that game. Washington wasn't bad either. BYU was number 12 in the country at the time. UVSU took them to overtime and beat the Cougars. Fardaws Aimaq had 24 points, 22 rebounds. He's a rebounder very much like Reggie Evans with a three-point shot. Probably not quite as athletic as Reggie. I don't think Reggie ever was real polished offensively. But a year here would really help under Fran, I think. And that's why I think Iowa's got a good shot. I think other teams bringing in some of these guys, I mentioned Arkansas, bringing in some bigs from the portal, hurts Fardaws' chances at extended minutes at those schools, although he's going to play wherever he goes. Gonzaga was after him. Kentucky was after him. But those are the two guys right now, guys. It's Fardaws and Jaden Delaire. Those are the only ones that I am aware of at this point that have had substantial Iowa interest. And I really don't even know the extent of Delaire's interest. I know there was one reporter, and I can pull this up. I should give attribution to him. Let me see if I can find it here. One reporter released this information that Jaden Delaire had been contacted by Iowa. And let's see if I can find it here. Maybe, maybe not. I want to give proper attribution to who we're talking about, but of course, when I'm trying to find the tweet, it's evading me. Okay. David Borges. So David is a beat writer for the Connecticut Insider. The Connecticut Insider. This is what he said back on March 23rd. So we're almost a month removed from this report. The report was Virginia Tech, Iowa, USC among schools that have contacted Jaden Delaire. And of course, this is kind of couched towards a UConn article. So the question was, will UConn begin recruiting him? I have looked up and down. I haven't found any updates on Delaire's recruitment. I don't have any way to get in touch with Jaden Delaire, so I have no way to confirm any of this. But I would trust this source that Iowa's probably reached out. But again, that was a month ago. And I guess this information had originally been relayed to this reporter from Delaire's father. So Delaire just seems like a kid who's probably not real media happy, right? And that's okay. That's all right. But as of right now, those are the only two guys that I'm aware of. Lemansky says, did Mark Rogers rate Ferentz 29th? Well, I don't want to spoil that. Mark, Voice of College Football, did a tremendous live show the other night where he ranked 130 head coaches in the FBS, and I can't confirm or deny this, Lemansky, because I don't want to spoil that. But check out Mark's video on his top 130 ranked coaches in the FBS. Right, all his coaches ranked, and I thought he did a really good job on Kirk as far as ranking Kirk. I thought his synopsis of Iowa football was really good. His evaluation of Kirk was really good. So definitely thought that was tremendous. And PJ and Bielema ahead of Kirk. I talked to Mark about that about a week ago because I know he's higher on PJ. PJ's younger. I know Mark has a soft spot for PJ. He really likes PJ. PJ doesn't have the West titles, and that's the only thing that I would give Kirk the nod with. But there are other things that PJ, I think from a forward-thinking standpoint, I think you got to give the edge to PJ. From a motivational standpoint, the edge is to PJ. Purely from wins and losses, I think Kirk would have the edge. Now, he's been here a lot less time than Kirk has. Now, Bielema hasn't proven it at Illinois, but he proved it at Wisconsin, had a tough job at Arkansas in a tough division. I don't have a problem necessarily with either of those. I do think you could argue either way. You could probably rank those three in any order: Kirk, PJ, and Bielema. But Mark did a really good job on those rankings. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely head on over to the Voice of College Football channel. Infin says that Kirk would make Adrian Martinez a safety. I don't know what Kirk would do with Adrian Martinez. It just doesn't seem like a natural fit. And again, there was that rumor out there, and I don't think that was legitimate. I don't think there's really anything behind that. It was out there. I know a lot of schools contacted Adrian Martinez. I just can't imagine that he would fit the Iowa mold. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him go to Kansas State and succeed this year. That would not shock me in the least. Okay. Am I missing anything here in our chat? I'll give one final call for the call line, 515-635-1601. And to end the show, if you want to call in, ask a football question, make a football comment, or if it's basketball related, transfer portal related, spring football related, coaching related, I don't care what it is, Iowa women's basketball, we can chat about it. This is the last call for the phone line, and I'm going to hang it up and get some dinner. But I do appreciate everybody hanging out here for the last hour and a half plus. Enjoy these shows, and you all make it possible to enjoy the shows and to have these shows. So thank you very much for being here. I will say this. If anybody is not already aware of this, if you're new to this channel, or maybe this is your first time here, we do a football show every Tuesday over at Iowa at the Voice of College Football with Mark Rogers. Again, the channel is Iowa Football at the Voice of College Football, Tuesdays at 4:30 p.m. Okay? If you haven't subscribed here, subscribe here, subscribe over there for the latest with Iowa Hawkeye basketball and Iowa football. Okay? Next week over on Tuesday at 4:30 on the Iowa channel with Mark, we'll be previewing Iowa special teams. We just previewed the quarterback position. I thought it was a really good show this past Tuesday on the Iowa channel, talking about quarterbacks yesterday, I guess it was. I really enjoyed it. I know people get tired of me talking about quarterbacks, and I get tired, frankly, talking about it, but it's a great discussion. The John Budmeyer situation is intriguing, at the minimum. And we have a great time every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. over at the Voice of College Football. If you want to follow me, of course, I'm on here on YouTube. You can also follow From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Twitter or Facebook. I'm at From the Hawkeye on Twitter, but search From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can also find this podcast. I'll throw this up on the bottom ticker here as well. This podcast is available through Spotify, Apple, Google, and more. Special guests coming up on my weekly podcast, my bi-weekly podcast in the offseason. And that is new Iowa tight end signee, Addison Ostringa. Addison will be on the show this coming week. So lots of great content to come and lots of great content throughout the offseason. So if you're a Hawkeye fan, born and raised or not, stick right here because try to get you the latest from everything. Recruiting, transfer portal, eval, breakdowns, coaches, guests, special guests, everything. So again, appreciate everybody being here this evening. Hope you all enjoyed it. I enjoyed the last hour and a half, and I promise we'll do it again here. Hawkeye Hangout here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Everyone have a great night.